Good morning. It's Tony Dattino here on Monday, August the 7th. And as the month of August has already gotten through its first week, it gets closer and closer to the 24th USA Memory Championship that we'll be doing here in Winter Park, Florida on September the 23rd. And on the 30th of July, we had our qualifying events, and I would only suggest everybody get to the USA Memory Championship website, and you'll get to see who our finalists are going to be. We'll be doing a Zoom call with them this evening and talking about what we'll be doing on the 23rd and the preparations that they have to do. So they'll have to start with names and not names and faces yet, and they'll start with a list of 200 words, and we'll give them what we call the mind maps of meeting 5 people in our Tea Party event. They'll have reports that they'll get in another couple of weeks on long-term memory, where they have to remember information 30 days later, and then we'll close it up with our famous deck of cards, which continues to be a popular event. So stay tuned for more updates. Just follow us on the USA Memory Championship website. But what I wanted to talk about today was something that I was reading over the weekend, and I was catching up on my mail as I returned last week from New York back to Windermere, Florida. And I wanted to talk about this issue of, let's see if we get it, the Tufts Health and Nutrition Letter. And the only question I was raising in my own mind as I was reading it, they headline it as new findings, right? They define it as new findings on cognitive health. And what I was questioning is that these are findings that if you've been following the evidence of cognitive health and fitness, and, memory, Alzheimer's, etc. A lot of these things have been coming out over the last, I've got articles going back 10 years. Now, they've not been consolidated and put into one piece. So this starts with emerging research is adding to our knowledge of how lifestyle protects our mental health or brain health. And that is a true statement. I mean, we can control more about our own brains and mental fitness than we ever thought possible. And we talk about nutrition. What are the right foods that we eat? And we've seen studies over the last, number of years that have talked about the foods we eat, the proteins, the fats, the carbs, are all coming into our mouth, but a lot of them go up into our brain to feed the chemistry and electricity of our brain thinking, our neurons and our dendrites and axons. And so a lot of the foods we eat, we don't stop to think about. How do they impact our own mental health and thinking? And so it does do a good job here of pointing out that you want to eat minimally processed plants and foods. So we know that Mediterranean diet may help delay age-associated cognitive dysfunction and prevent or delay the onset of Alzheimer's. Excuse me, my reading needs to be a little better this morning. But we're getting more and more details, but we think about our heart and our cardio and what our cardiologist or our intern doctors may be telling us. And so we're seeing more and more of the connection of not just our heart health, but our heart health is also impacting our mental health. And so what we do in terms of minimally eating processed foods, so and that goes for meats as well. Avoid ultra-processed foods, okay? So we can go on and on and on. Eating highly processed foods may increase your risk of cognitive decline. So again, we keep hearing about processed foods and its impact on our cardiology, but it also has an impact on our mental functions. So thinking about all of the nutritional things that we're ingesting and putting into our bodies has an equal priority to our mental health as well as our heart, and they're almost the same in terms of it. So if you're paying attention to cardio, a lot of this will help you with your mental. And do we ever stop to think of them as a system, right? Our bodies are one system, right? Yet we put them into, we go to a cardiologist, we go to an internist, we go to a dermatologist, we put all these things, a neurologist, and we put them into different silos, but yet who thinks of the body as a holistic piece? So I think this article does bring out, in terms of its findings, it does a nice job of consolidating all of the research that it defines as emerging research, as adding to our knowledge of how lifestyle can protect the brain. Well, It's been emerging for probably the last 10 years. And some of these things have been there, at least. This was a good one. Listen up. As we get older, our hearing gets worse, more so for men than women. So that was, God, that for whatever the reason they haven't found, but there's no question poor hearing increases the risk of cognition. A study analyzed information from 430,000 individuals. At baseline, participants were asked to report hearing loss and the use of hearing aids. Hospital records and death data were used to ascertain dementia diagnosis during the follow-up. Compared to participants without hearing loss without the use of aids was associated with a higher risk of developing dementia. So that is an interesting point of the connection you're making, and that I'd say, boy, I haven't read much about that at all. So that's clearly a new finding, and who stops to think about that? So what they want you to do is, if you suspect you have a hearing loss, or a family member, a friend that have noticed the problem, it's important you get tested. And maybe a hearing aid might be something that's helpful to you. And I see in my reading lots of suggestions on hearing aids and how inexpensive they're becoming, and the technology that's gotten so much better. Get moving. Now, boy, good, we've been talking about this for years. This is not a new finding. I don't know how many years ago it has started talking about the importance of exercise and aerobic, because our brain is using up a significant portion of oxygen. So this little 3-pound mass we've got up here in our skull consumes about 20% of the oxygen we breathe in. So it has been for many, many years that I've read and studied and work on my own physical exercises and aerobics. I remember Tony Buzan probably 10 years ago was telling me about the importance of physical exercise, but all physical being anaerobic and aerobic. And so Tony was very much in coaching me on weights, and not that I have to be a bodybuilder and lifting up 300-pound barbells, but the fact of continuing to work your major muscle groups, your thighs, your glutes, and your butt, and your arms, and your little bit in your chest, and certainly your abs and your tummy. So this is not a new finding, and I'm surprised that they call it that, but it's along with healthy dietary patterns. Regular physical exercise is known to be important to preserving brain health. These are the same measures that protect cardiovascular. So we're back to that point again. And what this is also suggesting is that you want to do, as Tony taught me years ago, keep the muscles going, because we lose some muscle strength as we get older, and this is basically saying, boy, keep working out those muscles. The body, I've read neuroscience articles that talked about the body, when it feels that the muscles keep working, the brain keeps going, and life expectancy keeps extending. The one that's been added in the research that I've seen, and they did not include this, is also flexibility, doing some form of stretching. How many people, as they get older, trip, fall, break a hip or fracture a hip, or do something with their arms or rotator cuffs? And so stretching, I have a daily stretching program that I do as well, given to me by Body by Design, a phenomenal person that coaches and takes me through different activities to keep my flexibility going in different muscle groups and different joints that I have in my body. So getting moving is and by the way, you don't have to be a runner or a marathon racer. Moving, the important thing is getting out and even walking. And so this goes off and suggests is basically, what do? Get moving. Any kind of physical activity in any amount at any age is beneficial to your brain health. They have recommendations here, but engaging in resistance training, or at least 2 days a week, is also recommended. So any kind of movement and walking is really beneficial to us because of what it has an impact on us. Now they come around and talk about taming stress. By goodness, 20 years ago I was attending workshops at IBM talking about how to deal with stress and what it does to the cortisol and what it does to the toxins that are in your body. And so how do you build resistance or resilience and recovery from when you're in those, and you feel your body go into fight or flight, and how do you back that up and build resilience into your life. What are the things you can do? Maybe it's listening to the right kind of soft music, and maybe it's taking a walk, and maybe it's reading a book that's enjoyable and not stressful to you. Maybe it's talking to someone that you can at least vent out to and do that. So taming stress is clearly something that's important. And then putting it all together and finding a social contact. Find somebody that you can be sociable with, and just find, as I was talking last week, we each want to have at least 4 people in our lives that in the middle of the night we could pick up the phone and call them and share our stresses with them, but also build social relationships. So maybe it's a cup of coffee, or maybe it's a glass of wine, excuse me, that you can share with them. So these are just the tips, and the good news is, oh, bad news, I'm sneezing. The good news is, underneath the USA Memory Championship, not only do we have the maximum memory mastery, but I think Michael Dattino has put together a fantastic summary of 6 elements of long-term brain fitness that provides more detail of what you might be able to do to maintain and sustain your cognitive fitness that your lifestyle can take to yourself. We're off to another week. See you back here on Wednesday. I hope everybody has a good start to their week, and we continue to work out the mental challenges that help us to stay mentally fit.